For this episode, I have two amazing founders in the AI sales space, Shriasha and Atul. As you all know, as a tech sales coach, I pride myself on finding authentic, genuine founders who are builders at heart. A lot of my clientele are former engineers who have learned sales from the ground up. Shriasha and Atul reflect that, but they've also created something that is really cutting edge within the AI sales space. There's so many AI go-to-market platforms out there, but none like the one that I found with Hyperbound. Hope you like the intro.
Absolutely.
It's amazing to meet you both live in person. We've been getting to know each other over the last few weeks and very excited for the interview. Let's start from the very beginning. How did you both meet? What was the genesis of this co-founder relationship?
Oh, this is a great story, and it goes back a decade. So Shriasha and I actually met in high school choir, if you can believe it. Yeah.
You're going to have to sing for us later.
Oh, no,
You set yourself up for that one.
We'll make it happen.
Okay. He's a good singer. I just I came along. But
Humble.
yeah,
too,
no,
yeah.
it's been like actually 10 years at this point, which is crazy to think about. But yeah, we stayed in touch throughout college. We were always the builder type. Like we knew that each other were if we were ever going to start something, it was probably going to be this guy that I'd be building with.
Nice.
And I think Sai can tell you the story of how we actually decided to start this company.
Yeah. Yeah, you were telling me a little bit about it, but yeah, walk us through that. Like, what was the start of Hyperbound?
Yeah, man, it's been a crazy journey. First of all, thank you so much for having us on here, Peter. Appreciate it. It's actually really nice to finally see you live in person.
Yeah, I'm better in 4D.
So yeah, the journey of Hyperbound, it's been a crazy ride, to say the least. Right, we actually went through Y Combinator in summer 2023. So I reached out to Atul at the time and asked him to be my co-founder. We had over 15 different ideas at the time.
Wow, 15.
15 different ideas, and we sat down and we spent the next basically 7-8 months just trying to figure out what to work on. And I don't know how we got into Y Combinator, but we managed to do it. And and with that, we just spent a ton of time. We almost interviewed 2,000 different people.
Wow.
To be able to get to the idea that we're working on today. And a big part of that was just cold LinkedIn outreach and cold email outreach. And somehow we ended up in sales, to no one's surprise.
Wow. Yeah. And so tell me about that. Can you go deeper into kind of the origin story? Because maybe you don't have to go through all 15 ideas, but the last idea was around outbound automation, right? Which there are a lot of platforms out there that do that today. Tell me about the aha moment where you were like, you know what, we have to pivot from this, and this 15th idea or 16th idea is going to be the one.
Yeah, well, I think it was something that came fairly naturally to us. It was a problem that we were experiencing ourselves, right? In fact, even the previous idea that we were working on, the outbound automation, was because we were reaching out to so many people to interview, like I was mentioning. To get 2,000 interviews, you have to reach out to a crazy number of folks. And that's what we were doing, which was why we came up with the outbound automation idea. And when we started selling that product, we realized, hey, there are companies who really need this, but there are large gaps in our sales knowledge. I'm a machine learning engineer. He's a full stack engineer. We've pitched and positioned our whole life, but never in the way of like a mid-market sales motion, which is what we were trying to run, which we were trying to learn at this moment.
Sure.
And the natural thing that comes to us is how can we get ourselves the experience? We don't want to do it by burning prospects, by messing up real negotiations. We wanted something safe, like a sandbox to practice on. So we went and built that sandbox.
Yeah.
You want to tell the story about?
It's really funny because, initially we had just built this script that we were using to train on, like just basic objections and things like that. And we were at a conference in New York at the time, and there were a bunch of sales leaders at this conference, so CMOs and CSOs, and somehow we were the only founders here. And we were at a couple roundtables with these folks, and one of them asked us and was like, "You guys don't sound like engineers. You sound like you can actually sell." Right, which we were really impressed by. Very flattered.
Yeah.
But also we knew that we were putting the work in, like we were training with this thing we had built, and so they started asking us like, well, how are you guys training? How are you guys learning how to do this? And so we showed them this thing that we had built. And we said, give us 24 hours and we'll come back to you with something more.
Yep.
Right.
And this thing was a AI bot that was speaking to you.
Well, the
right?
initial thing that we had showed them was not even that. It was literally our script. It was code. I showed them some code on Atul's computer that was just outputting a couple objections, and then we would respond to it, and then it would respond back, that type of thing. So it was like a chat.
Oh, wow. So without voice.
Without voice.
And people were still very impressed by that.
Exactly. And then so we had gone home, on the same night, and we said, we'll come back to you in 24 hours. Built out a very basic voice version of this product.
Wow.
Came back the next day, booked a couple coffee chats with these folks, and they were just mind blown by the concept, right?
Sure.
In fact, at the time, our voice AI would respond 15 seconds later.
And I think you said now it responds within 800 milliseconds.
Within
right?
800 milliseconds today.
Wow, that's mind blowing.
So it's crazy how much the technology has evolved even since then.
Mm-hmm.
But I think the biggest realization for us was just how mind blown these leaders were just by the concept alone.
Sure.
Right. And we had built so many things over the years. Right.
Yeah.
But nothing had ever gotten the type of response that this did. And that's how we knew we were onto something.
That's amazing. And these are like CROs, chief revenue officers,
Exactly.
marketing officers, sales leaders.
Exactly.
Wow.
These are folks with large sales teams
Sure.
and big responsibilities.
Yep.
When they saw something that could alleviate that burden, even in a very rudimentary way, with a 15-second delay, and like experience was built in terminal, like there was no UI for this.
Yeah.
They saw the vision. Like they were willing to look past all of those things, and that was like a very good moment for us, where like the problem is real.
That's amazing. I mean, especially because when I was a VP of sales, I barely had time to coach, but it was something I wanted to do. And so I'm sure it's mind blowing to these leaders who can now free up a lot of their time through a bot that they can train on their own, and then that can go 24/7 whenever the rep's ready, right?
Exactly. So, we always tell our customers the promise of AI is that it can ingest orders of magnitude more information than any human ever could, right? Which means that it can store all this tribal knowledge that you've kind of developed over time and use that information to coach your reps, right? And the best part is AI doesn't get tired.
Yeah,
right?
That's right. Yeah, yeah.
AI is not biased. It's objective.
Yep.
And that's the beauty of it is when you have something that powerful that can scale, that's objective, you can scale that to thousands and thousands of reps. And that's why our target market tends to be upmarket as well.
Yep.
Because that's when this product really becomes powerful.
Yeah, I can imagine like if you multiply and compound the onboarding time, right? It's a lot more painful with large sales organizations, right? That have turnover and training programs that are pretty heavyweight and move quite slowly. So that makes a ton of sense. Let me ask you, you're telling a lot about the capabilities of Hyperbound. We were so excited, we dove right into it. But how would you describe what is Hyperbound, and then where do you want to take it, right, in the medium to long term in terms of your vision for the company?
Yeah, that's a great question. So right now, Hyperbound is focused on two things. We have this amazing part of the product that is able to affect a change in a rep, right? It's able to have them practice, score their practice, teach them what they need to do to get a higher score, right? So that's one side of things. The other side of the product is our real call scoring product. We score the calls, we understand what the rep is doing wrong in real life, and assign them the practice. So those two parts of the product together complete the loop of what we're doing right now. And it enables so much more. And here's what's coming next. When you have the ability to both understand which practice should be done and actually affect the practice, you can now get into the realm of designing the training plans altogether. So you can say that, hey, Peter, let's say that you took the time to onboard 2,500 reps. I mean, it might have taken you like 4 or 5 years, but let's say you'd taken the time to do this yourself.
Sure.
What are the learnings that you'd get from that? You'd figure out, hey, this is the best strategy to get folks up and running quicker. These are the objections they need to learn how to handle faster. These are the common mistakes that they make when we put them out in the field. Yep. So let's redo our training process so that we get them to those scenarios faster. And Hyperbound can do all of that now because we do both sides of the equation. We can do that in 2 weeks, in 3 weeks. We can accumulate this tribal knowledge within the product. And that's where we become a super coach to the point where, like Sai was saying, with AI being able to ingest more knowledge than any human ever could, Hyperbound will be this coach that lives within your org and knows how to train your reps better than anyone else.
I love that. I love that. And I think you guys have done a really good job with the UI to allow the leaders to train it as well, right? It's not like this is just going off on its own, right? It doesn't have a mind of its own, as a lot of people might think. Like, I can actually go in and tell the bot, hey, you did this incorrectly, when you're trying to be a procurement officer. So I love the kind of like co-pilot aspect, even though that word is overused, I'd say. But you really, I think, do within the UI and within the technology live and breathe that, right? So I'm sure that was very intentional.
Yeah, it was extremely intentional from day one, because this concept, the only way it's going to become possible is if people are actually able to go in and build out these personas quickly. Because if let's say, for example, one of our customers today, they have over 500 to 600 different scenarios that their reps run into. Right?
Wow. Yeah.
And imagine having to sit down and build out 500 to 600 bots, right? No person is going to have the time to do that realistically. So the challenge for us from day one has been, how do we make this experience of building a bot as easy and simple as possible? And keep in mind, the people building these bots are not technical, right? They've never prompted something before. They've never coded. So it had to be something that was intuitive, something that they could just jump in and just use the UI, figure it out. And it took us a long time. Don't get me wrong. Like, our first iteration of this was just a Google Doc. People would just fill out a Google form that we sent them.
Wow.
Right?
Okay.
That iterated. We improved it, and finally we have the UI we have today. But that took a lot of time to get there.
Yeah. I'm sure. Well, I can't wait to do my bot kind of negotiation scenario, but we'll try and hold off as long as possible. In terms of, I guess, like stories too, I'm sure you're now, like, the aha stories when you first showed it are incredible. But now that it's out there with the UI and the current version of the product, and you'll evolve it even further, but what are some interesting success stories you can share? Even just on the qualitative side, like, what kinds of reactions are you getting from the teams you're supporting?
I just had a success call today with one of our customers.
Okay.
And usually the success calls, they're split between like, hey, this is what's working amazing and this is what I want. But this call was amazing. It was 15 minutes of just praise for us. I'm like, we don't get this very often, so it made me very happy.
Words of affirmation is my love language, so I would have loved that. But
oh, no. Like, I love this call. So
nice. Okay.
This org, they train folks to market for physical therapy centers. So you go to doctor's offices and you mention your physical therapy center. You try to get some clients in. They have salespeople all the way from 32 years old to 75 years old.
Wow.
Who operate in this org.
Okay.
And all of them were on our platform last week practicing. And they were just over the moon about how they didn't have something like this at all before.
Sure.
They have a total of 800 salespeople distributed remotely across the U.S. And then now they finally have something that they can hand to them that allows them to practice on their own time, on their own schedule, to improve when they have the space, the time to improve. These folks are, being hired at different times. There's all of this chaos that Hyperbound now, because it's scalable, because it's AI, because it's async, is able to handle for them. They're over the moon.
That's incredible. So one thing that popped into my mind, there's a lot of folks that are like, hey, with distributed sales teams, you don't get that like collaborative energy, which is why a lot of, I think, sales leaders are forcing their reps to come back into office, right? So I hear this a lot where, our numbers are going down because you need to be in like a war room style, kind of boiler room style place where you're hearing the chatter of other people. How do you both feel about that, especially with Hyperbound? And you just mentioned this is a distributed team that was really excited about it. Do you believe kind of that in-office energy needs to be there for sales, or do you think Hyperbound is starting to like replace some of that need?
So here's my take on the situation, right? I think ultimately I'm a big fan of in-person, and we are on a mission to build an in-person company in San Francisco. So, if anything, Atul and I are very big proponents of, in-person culture.
Sure.
And I do think that's a big part of it. But realistically, right, it's it's just not plausible to do that, because some companies, they've committed to it. They've committed to the remote culture. And at some point too, once you expand large enough, there's just no way to be fully in person, period, especially in the modern world. Post-COVID, things have completely changed, right? And but I think you're totally right. And part of what we're trying to build is create that collaborative learning environment inside of Hyperbound, right? Creating a space where you can listen to other people's training calls.
I love that.
Right? Where you have this like sales floor where you just like listen to each other, critique each other, right? Give each other feedback, right? Learn from what other people are doing really well or what other people are not doing so well, right?
Yeah.
So I think this is like that unified platform, essentially what you're talking about, but in a virtual environment.
It actually might accelerate the collaboration, right? Because people have access to the recordings, whereas in the old days, you might have to actually be in a specific place at a specific time, right? But now, like, these reps can learn at their own pace. And, with the most elite sellers, they're not able to practice during the day because they're talking to real customers, right? So I could see this being like a great central hub, like you said. Well, that's super helpful. What are you most excited about in terms of like a near-term feature that you're launching? Are you able to share? Because you mentioned there's the call coaching, there's a scorecard. Let's get like really micro. Like what are you excited about in the next, let's say, like quarter that you're launching?
Well, let me tell you a feature that we launched last, there's two, but let me tell you one that we launched last Friday that has got our customers super excited.
Cool, okay.
Internal competitions.
Ooh,
so
I think I saw like an external one on LinkedIn.
Yes,
too,
you did.
actually,
You did.
right?
Absolutely.
I wish I could have jumped in, but I was a little nervous. I'll admit I saw it and I was like, I don't know that I want to put myself out there quite yet. But anyways, keep going.
No, our external competitions have been such a big hit. Like we basically get the entire LinkedIn sales community together.
I love that. And tell the audience the
head.
context a little bit. It's like a cold call competition. Is that right? Can you give the details a little bit?
Yeah, absolutely. So the first couple ones that we did were cold call competitions. We did some discovery, closing competitions later as well. But the premise is that we want to let people show off their skills. And win prizes. So you can pop onto the platform. You can make a call to one of our bots. It's scored. You're put on a leaderboard with tons of other, big names in the sales space who are up against that board on you. You can see, did you rank above them? Did you rank below them? You get a couple tries, and we award the winners. Salespeople, the most competitive people you'll ever meet. So you can imagine how this grows like wildfire when you launch it.
It's really cool to watch. Like, especially when you start looking at the top 20 on the leaderboard, they are fighting for percentage points.
Wow. They're like all in the really 99 plus percent range.
Yeah, like and the type A sellers.
We've seen people get hired off of our leaderboard before.
Wow.
Yeah, this literally happened on the last competition.
Yeah, we had a company recently just use our leaderboard they literally interviewed the top 20 people on that leaderboard and actually ended up hiring one of them as well.
That's amazing. So, I mean, what you're doing is pretty mind-blowing because you're leveling the playing field across companies as well, right? And that's not necessarily something I think people think about. Right. How do you compete outside of your org? We're all familiar with the leaderboards in Salesforce.
And the old way of doing this too was very manual, right? Like you have a judging panel that's listening to these calls, and obviously everyone has a bias that they come in with. And I think the cool part about this, like I mentioned earlier, is AI is free of bias, right?
Yeah.
It's objective. And so, like when you see these top 20, they're all being graded against the same rubric, and there's no bias involved.
Yep. I love that. Well, we've talked a lot about Hyperbound and the success there. Super happy for you both and grateful that you're inviting me into your beautiful office here. Let's move on to kind of just AI in sales and go-to-market in general. Why do you think, and you tell me actually, but it feels like a lot of AI go-to-market platforms are struggling to gain traction. Do you see that with like your founder peer set? And if so, why do you think it's so hard to kind of crack the code with AI and go-to-market?
I think, honestly, there's a couple of theories. I'm sure we're even going to have different answers on this one. But a lot of it boils down to the ICP that you're trying to serve. So one thing that we noticed very early on is that most AI go-to-market tools were actually aimed at startups. Most AI go-to-market tools are aimed at folks who are just getting their start in the space. These established players already have a large headcount operation that is doing something, and it'll take a while to replace that.
Sure.
So what that means is you're targeting folks who don't necessarily have their ICP defined. Their product might be in the early stages. The value prop of that might not be clear. And the blame for any part of the go-to-market motion not working out now falls on your go-to-market AI product instead of potentially larger issues with the company, their ICP, their targeting, their product.
Sure.
And I think it's dangerous for, it works out in some cases, but I still think it's dangerous for AI sales tech startups to focus on startups as their ICP for that reason. It just adds a lot of noise and creates a lot of failure from what it looks like, but in reality, it's just the wrong folks you're selling to.
Yeah, that's actually really interesting. And you think founders gravitate towards that because they think it's going to be a faster sales cycle, right? Or maybe it's easier to tap their buddy's shoulder, right?
I mean, that's the beauty of sales tools. It's just really easy to build a PLG motion.
Yeah.
Sure.
Right.
Yeah.
Salespeople are always trying to find an edge on the market. They're always trying to find something new that they can do to stand out and be different from other people. So when you have a PLG motion, it's really easy to get leads in the door, but to actually close those and have them materialize into a larger deal, that's where a lot of companies are struggling today. That's what I'm noticing as well.
Got it.
And I do think there's some other reasons too, right? In addition to what Atul mentioned, and especially, this market is just extremely saturated, period. There are just so many sales tools out there, right? And buyers are just now more educated than ever, right? If I go onto Google and I search AI sales tools, I get a million articles with saying these are the top 50 sales tools to check out. And so what happens is they get so overwhelmed to the point where they're like, it's not even worth doing that.
Yeah, totally.
Some
There's
people don't even want to go through the
paralysis.
evaluation. Yeah, it's like that feeling of, well, I just don't have time to review all these, so I'm not going to take a bet on any of it.
Yep,
Right.
makes sense. So it sounds like what you're saying is like, don't be afraid to go up market earlier. That doesn't mean like go after the Fortune 500, but go after companies that have a messaging that they've already like seen work, right? And then the second thing I think you're saying is try to stand out, right, in a sea of things that look similar. So on that topic, how have you stood out, right? Because there are likely other platforms who say they could do similar things you do, right? So what was that like? Like what was the a few stories around lead gen or branding that have really worked for you? Outside the competition, I think is amazing, and that probably did a lot for you, but any other ones you can think of?
So I think a lot of it, today, like modern marketing, I think is all about messaging and the narrative that you build around the business, right? Our whole narrative from day one has been that there needs to be a fundamental shift in the way people think about how to improve the efficiency of their sales team, right? For the longest time, it's like, if my sales team is not performing, just add more heads, more volume, more emails, more cold calls.
Yeah.
It's activity,
Sure.
right? And I don't blame sales leaders for that, right? Because that's the only measurable thing, right? More pipeline, more revenue, right?
Yeah, and that used to work.
And that used to work,
yeah.
right? But now we're talking about a highly competitive B2B SaaS market, more competitive than it's ever been, and more educated buyers as well. So what does that mean for the industry as a whole? Well, that means that sometimes when you're in a competitive deal, the better seller wins, right? You might have the better product, but if your seller doesn't know how to talk about it or doesn't know how to position it, then you're going to lose that deal, right? So we've really been focusing on that narrative of like, it's not just about more activity, right? There's so many tools out there that are like trying to help you do prospect better, all these signal tools, right? All these automation tools, personalization and whatnot. But those are all pipe gen tools, right? What happens after the lead comes in? How do you make sure you actually close that deal? Right. And I think people are losing sight of that. And we're trying to remind people like, hey, converting those deals is just as important as bringing them in.
I love that perspective. Yeah, it's like not what you say, it's how you say it. And oftentimes first calls can win or lose deals, I think. because people want to buy trust, right? And trust is directly related to how well you can communicate and empathize and connect, right? Sorry, Atul, I think you might have been wanting to say something too.
Oh, no.
Okay.
I mean, the main thing that we've been seeing really in the space, like Sai was mentioning, is that there are two categories there's really two things that add up to sales. It's activity and then conversion.
Mm-hmm.
All right, it's the activity from the early stages of the pipe to force leads in through the top of the funnel, all the way down to like how do we move them along every stage of the funnel. And I think the predominance of sales tools in the last 5-10 years has been focused on, hey, what's the simplest thing we can do? Just add a number. What's the easiest ROI you can prove? Just add a number to the top of funnel.
Mm-hmm.
That space has been heavily commoditized. Honestly, buyers have been spam cannoned to death.
Yeah. Yeah.
So
Totally.
now it's all about like, hey, if I'm going to buy a B2B tool that I'm going to spend $100K on, I want to make sure I can trust my seller. I want to make sure that I have a positive experience through every stage, that it's someone who's going to guide me through this process. And you can't just take a junior seller and put them in the position where they have to do that. You need to teach them how to get there. And that's really where we're focused.
Yeah, makes sense. Can we talk about competition a little bit more, right? Because you mentioned there's like a sea of AI platforms, specifically not just the startups, but the incumbents, right? Because Salesforce, HubSpot, they're all trying to get into the AI game too. So does that concern you? Like, what is your thought and perspective on them, potentially saying, oh, we should be able to do this. And by the way, the integration with their CRMs is going to be a lot smoother, right? So what are your thoughts on that?
Well, if you've looked at Salesforce's roadmap over the past 10 years,
Mm-hmm.
Their strategy is just copy whatever's hot in the market. No, seriously.
As most incumbents do, right? Yeah.
And they have every product, like every sales product, every sales tech product that's come out
and
of YC.
marketing and customer support.
Yep, all of them.
Mm-hmm.
And it's a good version for some folks who need to check a box, right? Like you're a large enterprise SaaS company, you need to check a box that you have a solution in the space, you just add on the Salesforce offering. But there's a lot of folks who care about, hey, I want a dedicated solution that does a good job at specifically this, because this is a real problem that I'm facing. Mm-hmm. It's not a checkbox for me, it's life or death for my company. It's life or death for me as a CRO, right? Those are the folks who come to the best of breed, and those are the folks that we tend to attract in our inbound. Even Salesforce directly competes with us. They actually launched a competitor during Dreamforce last year. Yeah. But we have never lost a deal in that space. Those are not the type of folks who come to us.
Sure. Yeah. You're looking for the trailblazers, right?
Yes.
Folks who want to be at the bleeding edge and who are like, I want the best of the best, not a bolt-on that is a reactive, measure to what's happening in startup space, right? So yeah.
And I do have two things to add to that as well. When you start seeing companies like Salesforce enter the space, that's actually so heartwarming to us.
Yeah.
You're in a good spot.
They're studying
that's how you know you're doing something right.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
So that's the first thing. Like, the most successful companies have competition, because that's how that actually validates that there is a market for this and that there's a buyer out there that's willing to put real money towards this.
Yep.
Right. And in addition to that, I think there is something to be said about AI as well right now, right? A lot of these companies, like you look at Salesforce, you look at Gong, right? Some of these companies that came out saying, hey, we are AI first. We are one of the first ones to put this into production and all of that. The problem is that AI 5 years ago is not the same as AI today, right?
Yeah.
And these companies have spent millions and millions investing resources, time, money into trying to build the best AI models possible. And then overnight, you get something like ChatGPT, and it just throws everything out of the water.
Yeah.
Just blows everyone out of the water. And all that time and investment that was put into that just feels like it was all for nothing, because now it's fully commoditized.
Totally.
Everyone has access to the same type of resources. So now it's you have companies like Hyperbound that are leveraging those latest models that have come out, and we're already multiple steps ahead of the market.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
And we see ourselves as we're building the new age AI we're building the new age AI products in the market.
Totally. And you were actually born out of the age of AI, right?
Right.
Because the age of AI is very recent, as of the last like 2 to 3 years, right?
And I think whenever you see one of these large technological shifts in the underpinnings of technology, right, like the mobile revolution, like, and even going back further to like the .com era, right?
Yeah.
That's when you see a lot of innovation. It's almost a bubble. And that's what we're seeing right now, where the incumbents who are slower to move can't keep up with the pace of innovation. So it's a good spot to be a startup. It's a really good time to be a startup right now in San Francisco. And we're really feeling that.
That's awesome. Yeah, I always used to say when we were going up against security companies when I was at Twingate, you know, like changing the roadmap of even like a Zscaler or Palo Alto Networks is like moving a cruise ship. Right?
Yes.
It's an
Whereas,
oil
like,
tanker.
We say oil tanker.
Oil tanker. Yeah, there's all these analogies. Whereas you guys are like the fast-moving yacht, you know?
Yeah.
Okay, very cool. Well, before we shift over to your founder-led sales story, because I want to get into that, what do you think about kind of AI in sales in general, and like with teams who don't adopt AI? Like, what would you say to folks who are skeptical of introducing AI? And why do you think there's like such a heavy imperative right now to address bringing something like Hyperbound or any other AI tool into teams?
Well, I'll take this on in one way, in that I think every sales org is going to have a tool like ours within 3 years. I'm calling it. I'll bet any amount of money. I'm very, very confident in that.
Yeah.
It's just the fundamental shift that it brings to the ways that these orgs organize. Like the oil tanker metaphor that we were just mentioning earlier is a line of messaging that we use very frequently. You lose agility in a sales org very fast as it grows, right? When you have 5 salespeople and you can pull them in a room together and be like, we're changing our messaging to this tomorrow, go out and try it. It's very different when you have 2,500 sales reps.
Yeah.
And you launched 27, one of our customers has 2,500 sales reps. They launched
Wow.
27 new products in the last year.
Wow.
Can you imagine the lift to train them without something like Hyperbound?
Sure.
Right,
Yeah.
and
I
then-
can't actually.
And then now
I've never had to do that. Yeah.
they actually have the ability to launch that many products,
Sure.
and they can train all 2,500 of their sales reps, all of their channel partners who are selling this as well,
Wow.
in something like 2.5 to 3 weeks, as opposed to what would have taken 6 to 9 months.
Sure.
Like, this is such a fundamental rework of how these orgs consider agility and change management, that it's really going to blow a hole in the orgs who don't. So yeah, 3 years, I'm calling it.
And along those lines, I think when you say skepticism, right, I think the problem is there's almost no time to be skeptical because the cost of inaction is also too high, right?
Yep.
Every company is getting ahead of this right now, and if you don't, then you're just going to fall behind.
Sure.
Right. So there's like an aspect of urgency, there's speed, right? But the problem is you also have a million tools to evaluate, right? So you do have to feel for the buyer a little bit, right?
Yeah.
It's not easy being in the market and being pitched 20 different AI tools and not knowing where to put your money.
Sure.
Right, and
So
so-
how would you suggest, actually? Obviously, like everyone should look at Hyperbound. That's easy. But what do you do then as a buyer, right? When you're being pitched all these different solutions, do you guys have stories from your customers where, you know, they found it maybe a little bit less painful?
So our take is that not everyone should look at Hyperbound, actually. It's that there are, like, you really have to start with the problem that you're facing first, and then go and solve it, right? So what we see right now is buyers who have been given a prospectus of, or an imperative to go revolutionize the sales org with AI, which is very different than buyers of, you know, like 2 years ago who were given a problem to solve. Like, hey, the number of inbound leads that we're getting from this segment has been reducing. Let's go take care of that. So what we've even been doing, like our sales process is fairly consultative. It's there have been multiple instances of us turning folks away, saying that, hey, you're not ready for Hyperbound yet.
Wow.
Like, if you don't have enough pipeline to worry about conversion, you need to go fix your pipeline problem first before you come to us. So yeah.
Yeah.
Anything
And
to
I
add
think,
there?
I think what Atul is basically alluding to is it starts with the problem. All right. You identify the problem and you get really narrow. You got to figure out exactly what the problem is and really narrow down the scope of the problem.
Yep.
And once you do that, you actually have to figure out what's out there and how are we going to evaluate this, right? And and be able to solve that problem in its own silo. Like, I think that a lot of people get too broad, and they're like, you know, I have folks coming to me every day. I'm on all these sales calls, and they say, I just want to improve the sales efficiency.
Yeah, way too broad
right now. It's like, what does that mean, right?
Sure.
What do you mean sales? Everyone wants to improve their sales efficiency.
Yeah, some leader told them to do that, right?
Yeah.
So, some board member, not even some
member.
like high level agenda that they were not a part of the
Yeah,
decision.
and then when you ask them that question, they have no idea like what they mean by that.
Yep.
They've just been ordered to say the word sales efficiency, and I think that's where the problem starts, right? I you know, everyone blames the tools, and they're like, oh, like more tools need to consolidate. Like, it's not the AI go to market. It's not the space to be in. Like, I've heard a variety of investors talk about that, and I think I actually don't think that it's not about the TAM. The TAM is huge, and I think there's space for all these tools. Yep. I think that there needs to be a fundamental shift in the way buyers buy too, and both of them are happening. They're just happening slowly.
I love that.
I think we're just in a moment of such intense change. Like, I'm very confident that this buyer bubble of, because this is driven by fear and actually by like PE firms and VC firms saying that, hey, like, you need to go and take care of this in your org, right? Like, I am very confident that once the hype dies down, we're actually going to enter more rational buying cycles and products who are solving real problems all along, because there are a ton of AI go-to-market products that are solving real problems, not feeding into the hype like the AI SDRs.
Sure.
I gotta say.
Okay.
Like,
That's okay.
Into that.
Like,
I did train one of their teams last week, so.
Oh, okay. Well,
I may or may not cut that out. We'll see.
No, I mean, expanding on that just a little bit, like, there are real AI SDRs who like specialize in account research, who do a great job, and then there's spam cannons who have like insane month-over-month churn with their user base, because they are appealing to the folks who are just talking about improving their sales efficiency in their orgs. Like, that's the easiest thing to go by. It just sounds like such an easy solution to your problems, but there's so many things you have to fix first before one of them can be effective.
Sure. So it's like volume based, not quality based, right? And I love what you said. It's almost not about AI in sales. Actually, it's about solving a problem. And then seeing whether or not AI can help you with that problem, right?
And having an order of operations too. Like, you can't solve everything all at once. Sure. There's an order to the madness.
Yep. You can't boil the ocean. Yeah, I love that. Can you guys talk about a few AI platforms that you respect that are in the AI go-to-market space? Do you all like hang out with other AI go-to-market founders, or are you guys too busy building? Like, what are some that, you're interested in continuing to follow, if any?
Oh yeah, there's a ton. Like, I think the AI go-to-market space, especially in San Francisco, has been quite rich in the past couple of months. Like, one that I'm particularly interested in. This is not just in go-to-market, but it's in like hiring as well, which is a pretty large part of go-to-market teams. Is Merkor.
What's
Merkor?
Merkor?
Yeah. Mm-hmm. They are like a hiring manager for, like, they basically have an AI do a round of interviews with like the round that a recruiter would typically do.
Sure.
Like, this is not a specialist who is like doing deep technical interview questions with you, but it's like, wow, AI in recruiting is such a perfect application. You've got a captive audience on one side, someone applying for a job. You've got many folks who fall through the cracks because there's just not enough recruiters to give them all the time of day. And you now have this unbiased, nice solution that's able to take care of all of this. It's just,
Nice.
I love that
Merkor.
space.
Okay, amazing. Yeah, recruiting also has similar shapes to sales, actually. So I love that you mentioned that.
Yeah.
How about
it's a big part of sales too, which is what we do a little bit of that as well.
Yeah, you're selling candidates, right?
No, I mean, we literally have people call Hyperbound bots as a part of the hiring screening process.
Oh, that makes sense. Of course you would, right? Yeah, you're dogfooding it. Okay, cool. Yeah, Shriharsha, you were going to mention something.
I mean, there's a lot of tools out there that I have a lot of respect for. But I think one that I really have my eye on is a company called Common Room.
Mm-hmm.
Common Room, I think they understand the market very deeply, and here's why. Right? I think at the end of the day, for any of these AI SDRs or any of these things to really succeed, you need really good signal, really good intent signals, right? How do you know when someone's interested to buy? And so their whole philosophy is, can we collect and aggregate these signals across every possible channel that we work, right? Whether it's G2, whether it's LinkedIn, whether it's Google, whether it's your Reddit threads, right? Whatever it may be, they collect signals across all these different channels and aggregate it for you and build a 360 persona of each of your buyers, right? So I know Peter made a comment on Reddit about us, and Peter actually just made a post about us the other day on LinkedIn, and he actually just viewed one of our G2 reviews yesterday. Oh, maybe I should go email Peter and see if he's interested in learning more, right? I think that is the future, right? Like more and more people are interacting with all these different channels, and how do we actually keep track of who's interacting with our content, and how do we reach out to them at the right time? Because I think that's ultimately what's going to impact your response.
Totally, yeah. It's not enough to just say, oh, I see you work at Nike and I read through your public reports, right?
And how that really ties into AI at the end of the day is a lot of this data across these different channels, it's unstructured data, right? It's just impossible for a human to sit down and read through all this data. And that's where the AI piece comes in. AI can actually ingest all this data and actually fetch out the most important pieces of information that I can use to go write an email or write a LinkedIn message or whatever it may be.
Totally. Did you know I partnered with Common Room? Did you mention
no,
that on
no idea.
purpose? Okay, I love Linda and the crew over there. Kevin
That's
White,
awesome.
their head of marketing.
Yeah,
They're
Kevin's
great.
I caught up with him not that long ago.
Oh, really?
Yeah,
okay,
yeah.
Kevin's amazing. We did a webinar for the Zero to Hero founder-led sales community where he was
Gotcha.
talking about like signal-led lead gen for hypergrowth, right? So
Awesome.
I love that you mentioned
They're-
We're a customer as well.
Oh, you are?
Yeah,
Okay,
yeah.
great.
Customer,
So yeah, you
and
know
their
what it's
director
like.
of sales development, Florin, is one of our longtime advisors. as
Very
well.
cool. Okay.
Yeah.
And one of my friends, I don't know when we'll launch this episode, but she just joined as a VP of customer success at Common
Ooh,
Room. And she was
awesome.
just up front, actually. Yeah, where I used to work a while
Very
ago.
cool.
Small world. Let's move on to the founder-led sales journey. What was the hardest thing to get right for you guys? Being engineers turned founders. Like, do you remember, specific moments or deals where you're like, oh wow, this is harder than I thought?
Oh. One thing I will say is the pilot process is very, very hard to get right. Just because there's so many folks involved in the pilot process, you need to get buy-in from different levels, above the line, below the line. You really need to get everyone involved and bought in at the same time, while also trying to set up your product for them, right? And it's really easy to jump the gun on a pilot, do it too early when folks aren't ready, and use the pilot as a process to build buy-in. It's also really easy to do it like it's a much better scenario if you're doing it after everyone's already bought in, but then you're wasting everyone's time.
Sure.
So knowing exactly when to deploy a pilot, when to suggest it, whether or not it should be paid or not, that's a really hard thing for startups to figure out, especially because it's so specific to the product that you're building. Difficult go-to-market challenge for us that we keep finding. We keep iterating on. We keep finding
there's so
even
many
better and better
personalities
solutions too.
Right? So many personalities you're dealing with, especially if you're going up market. There's 10, 20 different stakeholders. So
the multi-threading becomes so apparent when you realize that, hey, there's really 20 stakeholders in this deal, and I've only talked to 10 of them. Like, I really need to go talk to these other 10 because any one of them can derail this deal.
Yep. Makes sense. That's why you guys like the centralized guys, right?
Yes.
Love for them.
Yeah.
How about you, Shriasha? What was difficult for you?
Yeah, I think it also has to do with the persona we're selling into, right? We sell to salespeople ultimately, and salespeople know the game. They know.
They're judging you.
They know exactly what comes at every step.
Yep.
They know why we're asking the questions we ask. They know why we're running the demo the way we are. They know that there's always a discount at the very end. They know the whole game, and so that means we have to be even better. And we have to be a level higher, And so how do we get there has always been the challenge for us. Is like, how do we run an amazing discovery to the point where they don't even realize that they're telling us things that they normally wouldn't, And that requires a little bit more like practice and experience and repetition. Which is exactly why we built this thing in the first place.
Sure.
Right? There was no way for us to do that because it's not like our pipeline was filled with leads when we first started. the only way to get that repetition was to practice on this tool and experience all those different scenarios.
Yeah.
So I think honestly for me that was the hardest thing, just like learning how to game the game.
Sure. Yeah, that makes sense. And what helped you with that mentality wise, right? Do you now feel comfortable on these discovery calls? Like what was the unlock for you to say, okay, like now I feel like me?
I think it comes down to confidence, man.
Mm-hmm.
It's all about the confidence. When I first started, I was an engineer. I'd never sold a single thing. And I went into these calls feeling like I was the odd man out, feeling like I wasn't the expert in the room. Even though I was the one selling the product, I felt like they knew more than me. And I used to treat idolize my buyers, right? I think at some point, once I gained the confidence to do so, like I realized, no, it's got to be the other way around, right?
Sure.
It's not about idolizing, right? That's the wrong word for it. But what I mean is, you have to feel like the expert in the room. You have to believe that. You truly have to believe that you know what you're talking about. Like I've had, hundreds of conversations.
Yeah.
I've done hundreds of discovery calls at this point, right? I know what I'm talking about.
Yeah, you spoke to more sales leaders than sales leaders speak to sales leaders.
Oh,
right.
absolutely.
Right.
So
Right. Like I did over 2,000 user interviews to get to this idea. And so that's the type of confidence that I lead in with now. Right. And it's all about mentality. That's the thing about the human mind. Right?
Yeah, you're right.
We think that it's just skill based, but a lot of it is just like your mindset.
Yeah.
Right. How you come into the conversation dictates everything else.
I love that. Speaking of the buyers, let's talk about the sales landscape today with, sales leadership. What do you think about specifically like diversity within tech sales? Are you seeing more of that right now, or do you still feel like there's a lot of work to do? What does your buyer persona look like when it comes to dealing with a diverse group of leaders?
Oh, okay. Well, I have one more thing to add here on this point, because this is something we're really passionate about. We partner with organizations like Uncapped, like Course Careers, like even P Club, and many of these other organizations, because tech sales isn't very diverse. Tech sales is very monolithic in one sense. It's interesting how it's almost resisted change in comparison to many other parts of an org. And that's really led to a gap where people like us people who look like us are very often not well represented in sales orgs, at least in the United States.
Yeah, completely agree.
It's really hard to bring about diversity in sales because the confidence thing that we were just mentioning is a really large factor in it. How do you feel as a minority who's entering a room of people who don't look like you, and you're you have to take charge of it? You need to be the leader. You need to be confident. And a really big part of this confidence building is practice, experiences that have gone well for you. And that's why we partner with these orgs. Like Uncapped, their entire focus is to bring folks who were underrepresented in the sales space, skill them up and make them feel good in their hiring rounds, make them feel good when they're getting placed at these places, make them feel like they have a right to be where they are. And practice and confidence goes a long way, and that's exactly what we help with there.
I love that. Yeah, I used to practice in front of a mirror all the time.
Yes.
Because as an Asian American male, I was afraid of speaking up, actually, when you see a sea of folks who don't look like you or come from different backgrounds. And I felt like I had to be that much better when I spoke because I felt like I was a rung below, right? And whether that was perceived or not, or whether that was reality, I'm sure there's a combination, right? But you're right. Like, it definitely plays with your confidence and makes you feel insecure at times, right? So I love that you shared that. Yeah. How about you, Shriasha? What do you think?
I've had very similar experiences, right? Where you walk into a bar and you're at a sales event and you're the only brown person in the room.
Yeah.
It's difficult. It's difficult to walk up to a stranger and start a conversation because you're the only one. You're the odd one out, right? And so I think for me, like for the longest time, it's something that I've been fortunate. Like, I grew up in the Bay Area where there's a very diverse population. So I've been lucky enough to be around very different people with diverse thought from different locations, different countries. So, I've been able to adapt to that very quickly. But, I think tech sales, there's a long way to go when it comes to diversity. And we're seeing that even when we go out there and see all the candidates that are applying to our roles, we're seeing more and more diverse folks. But
Great.
It's slow.
Sure.
It's not like this huge influx suddenly.
Yeah. What do you think that we can do from the sales leadership community to help accelerate some of that? Any specific ideas?
It's the hiring process. In my opinion, the hiring process is the single biggest broken part of tech sales, because so much of it is a vibe check, right? You're taking a chance on people, especially the early stages of sales careers. You're taking a chance on someone who has no experience in it. No one went to school for sales, right? They learned something else, and they're making a change into this. And when you're taking a chance on someone, you tend to take a chance on people who look, behave like you, act like you. You're like, you see yourselves in them.
Sure.
And removing that bias in the hiring process is going to go a long way, because these folks are very capable. They just haven't been given the opportunity because someone didn't take a chance on them. Yeah. And that's why we're really passionate about anonymizing, if we can, at least the very early stages, the recruiter led, the first two stages of the hiring process. However we can anonymize that, whether it would be with our hiring AI, whether it be with some other piece of technology, that's going to make the biggest impact that we're going to see 10, 15 years down the line.
I love that. Yeah. Any thoughts from you, Shriharsha?
I completely agree with that. I think in the future, especially with AI, like we're going to see more objective measurement of skills, right? It's going to be less about whether I like your accent or not, and more about whether you can do the job. Yeah. Right. And that's going to be a huge shift we're going to start to see for sure. And I think the industry today, it's far from, but with a company like Merkor, like you mentioned, or even like the hiring product that we've been using Hyperbound to hire our own salespeople. Yeah. It's the first thing we do. We have them do a role play on the platform.
Love that.
And it's purely skill based. Again, AI can understand any accent.
Sure.
Right? Yeah. It's just trying to see, can you do the job? Do you have the skills? Can you do discovery? Right.
I absolutely love that. And there are also minority sales leaders out there, and what I would love is for them to be more open in the public about how hard it's been. For the last 10, 15 years, and to show examples of, hey, you can actually do this job. And, you can go from SDR to VP of sales to CRO, and it doesn't matter what you look like or what you sound like. It more matters what you're delivering and how you're delivering it, right? So
it's crazy, man. Like sometimes I'll go to these events and I'll see one person out of the crowd of 100 that looks like me, and we'll just get along right away.
Totally.
It just feels like, okay, there's someone here that I can relate to.
Yeah.
It's the same struggle.
Yeah, I love that you said that too, because it can also be a superpower in certain cases. A lot of buyers are becoming diverse too, right? So I often bring up my Korean heritage if I see a Korean buyer, an Asian buyer, right? Because there's this kind of immediate understanding of what it's like to grow up in America being a minority. So appreciate 100%. You both weighing in on that. Well, we've covered so much ground. Really appreciate, again, both your time. Anything else you want to mention before we end this portion of the interview, or should we start to get me into the Hyperbound bot scenario?
Oh, I'm very excited. I'm very excited for the next part of this.
I'm nervous. I'm already shaking.
No, we're just thank you so much for having us, man. This was really insightful, and I really like your mission and what you're going for. And I think that diversity in tech sales, especially that focus, is something that I think not enough people talk about.
Appreciate that.
Purely because there just aren't enough people out there.
Sure. Yeah.
And it starts with things like this, right?
Totally.
And you're definitely onto something. So great work.
Thanks, Shriharsha. Appreciate
and
it.
thank you for coming up from San Diego for us.
Of course.
It's been really nice having you in the office.
It's been such a treat. I mean, you both are. I can just sense the passion, the genuine passion, and I hope this is the first of many conversations we have. So I really appreciate both your time.
Thank you, man. Likewise.
Awesome. Thanks, guys.